An Adventure in Fondya. Prologue. Chandor is not obviously a world of enchantment. There appear to be no ancient powers buried in its roots, no fairies in the branches, no castles beyond the trees, and no quest waiting to challenge us. It is, for now, a forgotten stretch of land on the outskirts of Penzance, a place where the sycamores grow in the valley and weeds are rooted deep into the soil. But when you step out of Chandor and into Fondya, that is where the magic happens. The land, soaring and plummeting, with its towering boulders and strange carved tiles, beckons us. It tempts us and dares us to cross over its ever-shifting thresholds, to hack our way through deep green thickets and into sunlit clearings, to scale the heights and descend into the caves. It invites us to take a risk, to rise to the challenge, to set our own compasses, to make of Fondya whatever the furthest reaches of our imagination will conjure. Chapter 1. Await the Bell. Tick, tick, tick. Arthur waited, his foot tapping anxiously against the rhythm of the clock, counting down the seconds until that beautiful sound that would signal the end of school. He stared out of the window, lost in daydreams, tall trees, winding paths, and the distant mound taking shape in his mind. Fondya was where he and his friends escaped to after school, a place where the three stood tall, ready to face the challenges of the land. A world stretched just beyond reality, shifting from golden afternoons to raging tempests. Boulders rose from the earth like giants cast in stone, the paths scuttering away, ready to deceive and lead you astray. Here held the stories of sieges, of hidden treasure, and even of gods. And all of it began the moment you stepped between the two trees. The bell rang. Arthur snapped back to the classroom, his eyes darted towards the teacher. Before Mrs. Trelaw could even open her mouth to dismiss the class, they all already had bags in hand and heading towards the door. Arthur glanced down, shoved his schoolwork into his bag, squashing his maths workbook in the process, and stood quickly and headed straight for the door. Pushing open the doors of classroom 8, he stepped into the hallway and spotted his two closest friends, Noah, a freckly ginger-haired boy, and Elsie, with her long chaotic hair. Their eyes sparkled with excitement. Homework could wait, for now they had somewhere more important to be. They fell into step together, forgetting tomorrow's lessons as they walked down the hall and out through the car park. Saying quick goodbyes to classmates, they turned sharply right into Lower Peveril Road, north down the hill, stopping just before the number 16 bus stop, then east onto Trannock Terrace, where they slipped into a narrow passageway. From there, they passed the old Penzance depot, where the owner sometimes left scrap timber for them, a familiar checkpoint on their route. Now they were on the final stretch. On their right, they followed the line of Chandor Brook, the water bubbling beside them, and then they saw it, a worn crack in the green, just wide enough to slip through, barely noticeable unless you knew where to look. This was the place. This was where it began. Chapter 2. Crumbling Walls. Checking for cars, they crossed the road. In front of them stood the wall, fortress-like, built from layers of stone that slotted together like a puzzle. Where gaps had formed, green vines and weeds spilled out, softening the roughness of the rock. It was too high to climb, but the three of them knew a secret. Just a few meters ahead, the wall faltered. A weak spot. Time had worked its way in, pulling the wall apart, just enough for a way in. They walked along its length, Arthur's hand brushing over patches of cool moss. Elsie led the way, pulling herself up and slipping through the gap, vanishing into the green. Vegetation was thick here too, hiding much of the ground beneath their feet. The stone wall seemed to sink into the earth, its grey fading into something new, bronze-red slabs that spanned outwards like splashes of paint. They varied widely in size, some as large as tables, others so small that they could be mistaken for grains of dirt. If you looked closely, some slabs were polished smooth as glass, while others were etched with strange patterns and worn marks that hinted at old stories. As they stepped through the break in the wall, the dense vegetation opened up. The stones gave way to a wide space filled with autumn trees, their branches still clutching hold of the last golden leaves. Noah scanned the ground, searching for the path. They followed the scattered slabs. Each one seemed to have its own character. Some stood apart, preferring solitude. Others clustered together, overlapping like old friends. A few appeared to vanish into the earth, granite chameleons. Arthur had learned to trust them, to walk on and wait for the next stone to reveal itself. The path wound and twisted, appearing and dissolving, as they passed tree after tree, and then, in the distance, they saw them. 2 rising forms, their portal into Fondya. Chapter 3. 2 trees. As they drew closer, the slabs grew denser, clustering together until they formed a proper path leading straight into the entrance. The towering shapes ahead sharpened into view. 2 great trees standing proud. "How old do you think they are?" Elsie asked. "Must be 1,000 years old," Noah replied without hesitation. Arthur stepped forward, listening to the soft rustle of leaves high above, their golden edges spinning down like the last rays of light. Around the entrance, crumbling stone walls rose on either side, their rough grey faces leaning in as to have embraced the trees. He looked closer at the left-hand tree. Its trunk was hollow, gaping wide enough for a child to step inside. Noah claimed pirates once stashed treasure there, hiding their booty in the carved-out space. These days it held their walking sticks. Any good adventurer, they believed, needed a staff, a piece of wood that chose them, shaped by their right hand and character, an extension of their body, a vital tool that in the right moment could save a life. Each of them reached in and pulled out their staff, gripping the worn wood like old friends. Then together they took their first steps between the trees. Chapter 4. Rocky Ground. Beyond, the bronze-red slabs branched into many paths, each one sparking off towards a new adventure. The 3 friends squabbled, as always, over which way to go. Elsie insisted on right, Noah swore by left, Arthur pointed straight ahead. To settle it, they had 2 rules. First, a fight to the death. But knowing their mothers, that was out of the question, so it came down as usual to rock, paper, scissors. Arthur came out victorious. Ahead, the ground rose and fell in waves of granite boulders, scattered at first but swelling in size the deeper they went. The distance stretched on, vanishing into a golden haze of autumn trees. Elsie crouched, inspecting the dirt. "See anything?" Arthur asked. "Some tracks. Could be animals," she replied. "Best keep our eyes open," Noah muttered, gripping his staff a little tighter. With that they set off, descending into the shallow valley. The boulders grew around them, some towering overhead, some balanced one upon the other like giants frozen in mid-step. They scrambled up and over, dropped down into narrow gaps, and then squeezed through cracks. Their sticks tapped against the stone, spreading their weight and keeping them steady. In one narrow passage, black stains marked the rock. "Fire," Noah murmured, crouching low. "Put out maybe 20 minutes ago." They exchanged glances but said nothing more, pressing on. The terrain grew rougher still. Twisted branches stretched between stones, forming crude shelters. Carvings scattered the rock faces, names, shapes, strange symbols whose meaning had long been lost or never known. In the dirt, small holes and scraped patches hinted at digging. Someone, or something, had passed through. They climbed, leapt down and rose again, the path shifting beneath their feet. And finally they agreed to scale one of the tallest boulders to get their bearings. Gripping handholds worn smooth by years of climbers, they hauled themselves up. At the top they paused, breathless. The landscape stretched wide before them, a sea of stone and scattered gold leaves beneath the fading light. "Look, over there!" Elsie pointed east. Arthur and Noah turned, following the line of her hand until their eyes landed on it, a shape in the distance, half hidden by trees and rock. "What's that?" Arthur breathed. "Come on, let's find out." They gathered their things and climbed down, setting off towards the unknown. Chapter 5. Stone Circle. As they climbed down, the landscape began to change. The dense, chaotic boulders gave way to something gentler. The rocks here stood tall and still, proud but solitary, scattered wide across the ground like ancient sentinels. The air shifted too, becoming calmer. Tree branches swayed softly in the breeze, and the birdsong faded into a gentle murmur. The golden light cut low through the air, casting long stretched shadows that danced as they moved. Their fingers trailed along the warm stone, contrasting its rough edges and smooth patches worn by time and weather. As they headed east, they saw it, a wall of great rocks rising ahead. The gaps looked too narrow and jagged to squeeze through. They circled around, hands brushing the rock, until finally the stone seemed to part, opening into a broad, hidden space. Inside, the world was enclosed by towering rock faces, forming a silent ring. But through the cracks, the golden rays seeped in, cutting beams of light across the ground, and catching on 7 standing stones that rose just below head height. The 7 formed a wide circle, each one heavy with age and presence. "Another merry maiden circle," Elsie whispered, her voice barely more than breath. They stepped forward, walking slowly, tracing the textures and fractures along the stones. No markings here, just the raw surface, crackled and veined like old skin. Layers upon layers, as if the rocks themselves held the memory of ages past. They stood there for a while, maybe a minute, but maybe some hours, wrapped in silence, as the golden light shifted and the wind stirred only faintly around them. Chapter 6. The Cave. As if by instinct, they all knew it was time to move on. Leaving the golden light behind, they stepped out from the circle and looked up. On the hill above, smoke curled into the evening sky. "Look," said Noah, "people are in the cave." "Let's go," Arthur said, already moving. He led them along the steep path to the right, where scattered bronze tiles flickered here and there underfoot. They climbed hard, lungs burning, until they reached the top and pressed on towards the black mound. As they got closer, the smoke thickened and the voices carried faintly on the breeze. Staffs in hand, they pushed forward, passing under an arch formed by branches, twisted and woven together over time. It was like stepping through a gate. The woven wood creaked faintly as they passed through, brushing their shoulders. Near one of the cave's entrances, the flicker of firelight spilled out, casting wild shapes against the dark rock. Laughter echoed inside. The glow beckoned, warm and alive, wrapping them in its embrace. The voices sharpened into familiar tones. Arthur's grip loosened as he recognised them. Denzil and Jenna, tending the fire and laughing together. Both turned, faces bright in the firelight, and beckoned them closer. Denzil rummaged through his bag and pulled out 5 large golden pasties, placing them on a flat stone by the flames to warm. Inside, the cave walls caught the firelight in patches, the rest falling into soft shadow. Above them, faint daylight still filtered through the entrance, mixing with the glow. All around, the stone was etched with carvings, lines and symbols worn deep into its dark surface. Higher up, bold strokes of red and blue paint spread like constellations, stars, patterns, maybe even fragments of stories. Noah rose slowly, scanning the cave, his eyes fixed on 2 objects near the wall, a heavy iron rod tapered at one end and a mallet. He picked them up, stepped forward and struck the stone. A low resonant note rang out, the cave humming with the blow. Again he carved, adding his mark into the wall, another story layered into the stone. Then, without a word, he set the tools down and returned to the circle. They sat together in silence, the firelight flickering against their faces. Caught between the last breath of daylight and the warmth of the flames, each one sat wondering, what might the next story be? Epilogue. As Arthur made his way home, following the brook towards the sea, he turned for one last look. Behind him, the valley lay in silhouette, washed in deepening blues as night began to settle in. He faced Chandor. The trees had lost their dance, the hedgerows grown wild, but if he squinted, looked right into the depths, past the looming walls and scattered mounds, into the very heart of it, Fondya gave the faintest shimmer. He adjusted his backpack. Tea would be waiting, homework was due, and so he turned and walked back towards the world.